here pushing this chair, and Kim, who you saw at the front sign-in sheet. So Anita and Kim will also know tons of information about our organization, about what we're doing. And if they don't know the answer, we'll figure it out together. Also honored to have a board member here. Jeannie, would you give a little wave? Jeannie is one of our Haw River Assembly board members, and dedicated volunteers and board members like her make our work possible. So just wanted to give a shout out to her. Okay, so let's jump into the content. So we are here to talk about how to fight the Enbridge pipeline that is proposed for Chatham County. And this is the agenda, just as a reminder. I forgot I made this slide. But we'll do a brief intro, community-led Q&A, and then we'll do breakout groups. Okay, so the proposed Chatham expansion project is a fracked gas pipeline. Haw River Assembly is oriented towards clean energy, and that means that we don't believe that we should be building more fossil fuel projects. Fossil fuel projects not only have a lot of health and safety concerns, not for the general population of humans, but also our more than human community members, like the Haw River, like the creatures that fly, the creatures that crawl, the creatures that swim, the creatures that run. All of them get really harmed by this fossil fuel infrastructure. We also know that we want to champion community-owned local energy sources that are clean, right? This is a project that's connected to big industrial corporations like Duke Energy. And if people have any exposure to the Duke Energy rate hikes that are being proposed, there's an 18% proposed rate increase for all electric bills. And Duke Energy's justification for that is that they need to meet public demand. Well, we're going to talk about kind of that myth of public demand today. So some key project details that we've learned. It is going to be 28 miles long, this proposed pipeline, and it will be around 12 inches wide. So if you all attended our first meeting that we had back in May, we suspected that it might be a large pipeline, between 36 to 42 inches. Those are the pipelines that we have experience fighting before. This one is reportedly, from on-the-ground Enbridge employees, going to be 12 inches. Talking to attorneys and people that have experience dealing with projects like this, they've said it's very unlikely that the pipe would be any larger than 18 inches wide. Because they're saying 12 inches now, it is possible that they might make it be larger. It's also possible that if this pipe does get put in the ground, that another pipeline, a larger pipeline, could be co-located alongside of it. So, not to say that there's no danger at all because it's a smaller pipeline. There is still impacts that happen from this high pressure gas flowing through this pipe. That means that the pipe will be installed at about a 4-foot depth, and that the reported pressure that's going through, it will be around 800 PSI, which is the amount of force that the fracked gas is traveling through the pipe.
Fracking gas.
That's great. The tires have 33 PSI as a comparison. So one of the harms of fracked gas pipelines is that we know that all methane gas, which is what this is, you might hear it called natural gas. That's a bit of a misnomer that companies like Enbridge or Transco Williams or Duke Energy will use to try and paint their energy source as being cleaner and more reliable than something maybe like coal ash. Now, while it's true that it doesn't have the same impacts as coal ash, methane gas still has a lot of harms compounding that affect rising temperatures and other types of pollution. Methane leaks at every stage of distribution for pipelines, so that means that it is leaking out when it's fracked, which means that we're blowing into the ground to release this gas. It is leaking when it is transported through distribution systems, and we know that most pipelines leak or have serious issues with explosions. On an average in the United States across the past 13 years, 9 people are evacuated every day. An explosion occurs every 12.2 days, and an injury every 6.5 days due to pipeline incidents. Harm is the range at which people could be exposed to some of these harms is considered is called the potential impact radius. You might see this as PIR. And so the potential impact radius refers to the entire space, the area that would be affected by a blast zone if a pipeline explosion were to happen. So with these numbers that we have, we can estimate that the expected blast zone is around 241 feet. Could be larger if they increase the pipe from 12 to something like 16 or 18 inches. The other thing that we now know about this project is that land and aquatic surveys are ongoing and will be continuing throughout the month of June. Now, this is something where it's really important. This is our most up-to-date information. There's been some back and forth on this as we are learning more about the type of pipeline project that it is. This project, because it's only happening within the boundaries of North Carolina, is referred to as an intra-state pipeline. That's I-N-T-R-A, state. That means that it's not crossing any state boundaries. Interstate would mean that it's coming through multiple different states. So pipelines that Paul River Assembly and our colleagues have experience fighting are interstate. Interstate pipelines require not only statewide permits, but also federal authorization from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which is often abbreviated as FERC, F-E-R-C. That will not happen with this pipeline project. The other thing that will not happen with this pipeline project is the NC Utilities Commission does not govern the decision for this pipeline project. So they do not approve or veto the routing. What they will do is they will consider some of the survey information that they're gathering, and they will have some small secondary elements that they review. But there will be no certificate of public necessity that is issued by the Utilities Commission. That's a piece of clarification that we've gotten recently. And that's because of this interstate process. So we see a lot of gaps. What? Oh, thank you. So we see a lot of gaps in our law that adequately can help with these pipeline projects. Something like a power line does have a different system where it does go through the Utilities Commission. This is an excuse for a pipeline, so it's a gap in the law. Enbridge has not submitted their project for application yet, but they plan to do that in the second half of this year. So that's why they're gathering all of this information right now. Their route does not have to be approved by the Utilities Commission. So they're allowed under statute 40A11 to do these land surveys and these aquatic surveys. When the surveying is happening, something that's super important for landowners to know is get everything in writing. If someone who's doing surveying is speaking to you, you say, oh great, can I get your email? Write down everything that they told you and email it to them to confirm it. Even if you don't want to get an attorney involved, having everything in writing is essential. And confirming it with them. Because they might tell you something, and then you email them back to confirm, and they might be like, well, I don't want that exactly to be in writing. So get everything in writing that you can. Other surveys that are happening are archaeological surveys. And there's some concern that they haven't followed the proper procedure around getting the authorization to conduct archaeological surveys. Some community members have spoken with the state of archaeology, and there is a process that Enbridge has to follow, which they have no record of Enbridge submitting any of that. And there have been sightings of people doing archaeological surveys with tools that dig into the ground that especially require permits. So there's sometimes you can get away with just like a, kind of shallow survey, but they are doing surveying that has tools, and the Office of State Archaeology does not know about that. Obviously, I am especially concerned because there's been no indigenous communication happening, so a lot of the local tribes or tribal leadership, like the Lumbee or the Cherokee, have not been made aware, and it is my opinion that the indigenous folks should absolutely be included in this process of archaeological surveying. The last thing that is a key detail to know is that Enbridge says that this project is not to service industrial customers. Now that's their stated position. They claim it's intended for residential demand and residential growth. But we don't believe that this is all that the story is, okay? When you look at this pipeline in the full regional context, you see that these large corporations are betting on the fact that large load customers, like the Montour data center, that could happen, are increasing this collective demand for energy. And what Duke Energy is saying is that the only way to supply that energy is through fossil fuels. So we can see how there's a couple assumptions that are being made, and they are being very careful to use the language that it's for public necessity, and including all of these large load users into that public. And I'd be happy to talk more about the conflation of public need, but we're going to focus on this project for right now.